the thing is, like, our purpose is create financial empowerment for everyone, and that drives us. But the timing and priorities can change based on new information, where technology is added at a certain time, the customer need, the macro environment. So being really open to the path to get there.
The New Zealand Business Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, your strategic and proactive IT partner.
Greetings and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Paul Spain, futurist and chief executive at Gorilla Technology. I love to see individuals and their organisations thrive. The New Zealand Business Podcast is all about this through sharing the business, leadership and innovation learnings of others to educate and inspire all of us so we can do better both in New Zealand and on the global stage. In this episode, I'm talking with Brooke Roberts, co-founder and CEO of Sharesies, an investment platform that is reshaping how people in both New Zealand and Australia think about and build wealth and financial empowerment. Brooke's journey into business began while she was growing up in the Hawke's Bay. Her passion for learning, entrepreneurship and social impact led her to the Wellington region and into marketing and finance. Brooke and her co-founders saw a glaring gap. Investing was largely inaccessible to so many people. That insight sparked the creation of Sharesies, a platform designed to democratise investing, even with small amounts of money. Since launching in 2017, Sharesies has grown fast, now closing in on helping 1 million people to take control of their financial futures. They're continuously evolving with products such as Sharesies Spend, which gives customers 1% of debit card purchases back for immediate investment, and a new in-app capability for acquiring Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. The New Zealand Business Podcast is proudly brought to you by Gorilla Technology, the technology services firm supporting astute, mid-size and smaller New Zealand organisations who wish to get the very best out of technology, doing this whilst minimising cyber risks. Get in touch to find out about tech and cyber audits, along with software selection and implementation services. All right, let's jump in. Brooke Roberts, a real privilege to have you on the New Zealand Business Podcast today. How are you?
I'm really good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to be able to catch up and to be able to get a little bit of a delve into to some of your story and the Sharesies story.
Yeah.
And as always, I always like to kind of go back to the beginning a little bit. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what that looked like.
I was in the car the other day with my family, actually, and I was counting how many schools I went to. So I went to at least 9 different schools. So I don't know if that gives you a bit of a flavour that I didn't grow up in one place. From, Manurewa area, and then moved to Tauranga. Grew up a bit in America also, and then came back for high school years. So, been around a few different places, but now predominantly based in Te Whanganui Tara with Sharesies in my family,
Yeah. So, when you look at that period, and, those of us that have moved a little bit, I probably moved, less than you, but a bunch of schools, there can be sort of different things that you pick up through that compared to just sort of staying in one place and everything's the same. Are there any things that sort of stand out for you in terms of, learnings during your childhood from that time of, change and what you learnt in terms of, your parents' work and so on?
Well, I had to learn how to make friends fast and adapt to different kind of cultures and, ways of thinking, I think, and how to make new friends. And then also I did, in particular, when I moved to America, I was 10 years old and at a kind of a rural school outside of Tauranga, and we were learning still times tables then, at 10. And then I go to America and I'm like, there's letters in math. They don't call it maths, math. And I was just like, I just saw the jump. And when you walked into school, the A and the AB honor roll was right there. So are you an A student or an A and B student? And unlike what I felt here, which if you did that, like, ooh, like being good at sports is cool. But there, like being on that really mattered. And if you weren't on it, you were kind of like an outcast. It was really different. And it was a big public school, but I just saw dynamics of what success looked like just felt different when I moved there at that young age. So I think I had to adapt to that. And I think that was part of the adaptation I think was really helpful for me. I needed to kind of hone that energy into something that ultimately would serve me well.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because in New Zealand, you're doing well at something sort of school wise. You're probably going to get called names rather than get
Well, just more
celebrated
cool to be a fool.
potentially,
And
right?
I just remember I just wanted to be outside climbing trees and running around the paddock,
Right,
but which I think is beautiful too. I think it's a beautiful part of a childhood here that is just, feel really privileged to have had that.
Yeah.
But just the academic focus was just quite different. I noticed at 10 anyway.
Yeah. And where were you in the US?
I moved to Birmingham, Alabama, and then Richmond, Virginia. So, yeah, the deep south to start.
Yep. And was the scale of the schools different?
Oh,
then?
yeah. So, moving from, the school outside Tauranga, Mokoroa, where there were 70 of us up to, year 8, so Form 2, to then going to the States where there's like thousands. Like I think one of the schools, 2,000 or something, and I know there's scales like that here in New Zealand, but I just I'd never seen that before. And that was only for elementary. And then middle school was the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, during those school years, what came through in terms of initial interest in business and entrepreneurship? Tell us about that.
I think where it became more obvious was actually at high school. A friend of mine and who it was awesome. We didn't have a tuck shop at our school. So we started running one from my locker and then that got shut down. But the teacher dealt with it really well. She's like, look, really applaud the entrepreneurial spirit. This is against the school rules. So I do have to take you to the principal's office and I like that. But we'd run it secretly for a while. Well, not that secretly, to be honest. It was pretty bustling, this locker was in this hallway that, started to create traffic jams because we were lined up to get whatever we were selling, lollies and stuff.
Wow.
But then I was able to do Young Enterprise. I talked to my teacher. I was like, hey, I've noticed that I think there's this opportunity here. And she was like, cool. Well, there's this thing called Young Enterprise that I hadn't heard of. And like a few that have come on this show have done Young Enterprise.
Yes.
And I really think that's an incredible gift to have been able to have a program like that at high school to run a business and learn within safety nets in terms of how it all works.
And tell us about that experience.
I learned a lot around hiring, motivation, working with friends, how to corral people around an idea and make it happen and deal with different like political or different community groups and how you help them come together. So I learned a lot. And one of the key things I learned was this word mentor. Like I hadn't heard that before. We had to get a mentor. And so was fortunate enough to be connected with this mentor who was part of the community. And, now she's like a family member to me, it's pretty incredible. And I think that served me well when I went to university and didn't come from, family with big business connections or anything like that. So I needed to find mentors that would help me navigate how to have a career or how to, be part of starting Sharesies too.
Yeah, we all need that, right? And so what was the enterprise that you did
okay. So I got a scholarship to go to the school in Hawke's Bay, and I'd noticed that there's all of these really expensive clothing shops there and people who had money to pay for it. And like a lot of women in particular focus a lot on fashion. And I was like, there's no events. There's nothing that pulls this kind of fashion vibe together. And at the time, I thought I might end up down a path of fashion design or fashion business. So it was kind of this, combined a few interests, I guess, at that time. And so I started running these fashion events and with 2 other friends, and they just did really well. Yeah, so well. We got, profit that we bought flip phones with. So how cool are we? I wish I had Sharesies and invested in it back then. But,
how old were you at that stage?
I was year 11. Yeah. Or year 12. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something to be said for those opportunities that come during our schooling years, whatever they look like. And I look back on 1 or 2 things that I had, and it was just experience that you know, that feeds in and helps you for what comes next.
It's
right?
so good to learn by doing, and it's a great way of doing that. And a really good way of learning about money too, how you need to sell these tickets for more than what it's going to cost to run the place. I think it was, pretty good learning.
That's brilliant. And it sounds like the people side of it was super valuable
I learned a lot. Yeah.
That's great. And so, where did you go, from there, from high school in terms of study? What did that look like?
Yeah. Well, I was offered to become an accountant straight out of school, and that accounting firm would pay for me to do my accounting studies locally in Hawke's Bay. And I was actually kind of tempted at because I was like, well, you and my family, it kind of looked like it made sense. You get paid to then study, and you actually have a hard skill at the end of the day. But very last minute, I actually decided, no, I do want to go to university. And so did end up going to Victoria University. And I also thought that, if I could continue running businesses at that time, but decided to move down to Whanganui Tara. There weren't many from my year going down there. There was a few, which was cool to start to, have the university experience. And I needed to work in order to make, the hostel payments and everything. So the first job I had was find a job. And then I really enjoyed my time at uni. I studied marketing and international business, but I felt like it was like just missing something for me. And it wasn't until a 300 level marketing class that I realized it was missing like the analytical numerical kind of side I really wanted to dig into. And I noticed like in the marketing classes, I was way more interested in the scientific side rather than the art, or like, I just seemed to get, that was where I was most intrigued on. So we had this guest lecturer, and he's like, out of 300 of us in the class, he's like, put your hand up if you like numbers. Only 3 of us put our hand up.
Wow.
And I was like, well, I've got to do something with this. And I saw marketing as quite a data-driven, very important part of growing a company and connecting, people with what you're selling at the end of the day that ultimately drives that impact. So I could, behavioral finance and behavioral economics was really interesting to me. Just picked up finance, and there we are. Yeah.
And what were the ways that you funded your study at that point? What did you do alongside your study to make that work financially?
Yeah, well, when I was at high school, I was the first one to get that I understand. The principal told me at the time, so it took a bit of work to actually work while I was at school. And so I worked in the dishwasher, and then I worked in a retail store. And when I went to Wellington, I worked at an Indian restaurant for quite a while, and then cafe, and then ended up in retail, and just, any jobs that could kind of work around my studies. And then ultimately, because of that whole mentoring thing, I ended up at this company called GS1, which run the barcode numbering system worldwide, because the CEO of GS1, who's still the CEO there today, was on the board of the business school. So that was really helpful that, he was looking for somebody that was a student at the time. So that started the kind of professional career.
Yeah. And when you look at those jobs that, you wouldn't necessarily say were aligned with marketing and so on, how important do you think doing those sorts of things are? Would you encourage others that are, whether it's, those listening in who are sort of thinking a little bit about their future and thinking, well, we should just focus entirely on our study and we can, sort it all out with loans, or maybe parents that are listening in that are, trying to nudge youngsters along, was there good that came out of that for you?
I think I didn't realize a skill I have, I didn't realize was that rare. And I think it comes from studying and working really early on. I can, and hopefully I don't trip up on this word, but compartmentalize really well. It's one that always gets me. And I think, I can go, okay, well, I'm focused on this thing now. And even when I started working full-time, I was studying full-time pretty much at the same time. So I think I didn't realize like how rare that is. I think some people find it quite hard to kind of clock into something else or clock off, and I can do that. So I do attribute that to studying and working together at a young age, and also just managing money. I think, I had to make ends meet every week, and then needed to start supporting my family at times too. So I was doing that while also trying to learn and grow my brain and future opportunities too. So I think it really depends on the person and what type of studies they're doing and how onerous it is. But I do think it was beneficial for the way that I work.
Yeah. And you did some tutoring as well
Did
when
tutoring,
you were studying?
Yeah, look at you.
Yeah.
Did that. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I wouldn't say, I look at everything that has really helped to be part of like creating Sharesies and what we do today. Like that, when you're in retail, when you're in a cafe, when you're dishwashing, you're learning a lot about the especially in dishwashing, the operational flow of a business. I think you're in the kitchen, you're seeing it work fast. Like you need to. There's this pace to it, which I think, is a really good hone skill to have. And then in retail and hospitality, it is like serving people and connecting with them and dealing with different personalities and seeing how you can support them. And ultimately, actually, I found in retail, there was a lot to do with like actually helping people build confidence or just see themselves in a different way. When they came in, I tried something on or something, the way that people talk to themselves was horrific sometimes. And I was like,
wow,
wait, I don't see what you see, And so I think there's like a lot that has filtered up, and I think I've learned from, those past experiences.
Yeah, it sounds as though your sort of extracurricular, outside of your study work, probably contributed as much or more as your study in many ways, just from the variety of things that you were involved in. And I guess, tutoring as well teaches you, something that's really helpful as an entrepreneur and a leader in terms of, thinking about how you can help people build up their skills and confidence and progress too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And so, walk us through these sort of, I guess, initial roles that you did in marketing, GS1, AJ Park. Tell us a little bit about what that actually looked like for you, and what were the things that you were learning.
Yeah. So that opportunity came up to work at GS1 while I was studying towards my honours in marketing. And then I started to do my Masters in Finance. And at the time I was told, I knew I'd always want to create a company. But at the time, the opportunities were like marketing or finance. So, my finance lecturers at university would be like, why are you studying to learn marketing? All you're going to do is be able to learn how to stock shelves. Ho, ho, ho. Just have lived in this theoretical world and no idea of like actually the economic side of marketing or the impact that it has on people. And then and then I'd also hear, if you want to be a CEO one day, typically that's the CFO path that gets there. And so I was trying to figure out, but I want this to come together somehow, And it wasn't until when I was working at AJ Park doing my Masters in Finance, I went to this event where the CEO of KiwiBank spoke, and he was talking about his background. And I was like, oh, he's the CEO of a bank and he's got a marketing background. Like that's something I told doesn't really happen. So I went up to him afterwards. I was like, will you be my mentor or something, with like this business card? And he's like, no, but I'll meet you for a coffee. And then met me. It was the first time I felt like, I was always trying to build connections or figure out, learn from as many people as I could. Yes. And I'd go to these meetings with so many questions written down to ask. And I don't even know if I was actively listening, but I was writing notes the whole time. But he completely flipped it on me and started to want to learn about, what my ambitions were or what my skills were. And then ultimately handed over my CV to KiwiBank and ended up getting into as an analyst, a SQL analyst, and then into kind of hybrid marketing finance roles that essentially was product management. And I was like, this is my jam. Because I love we were hedging, we were pricing, transactional accounts, term deposits, savings, like really gritty stuff, looking at the data, seeing how we could impact people and help them save more. I absolutely love that. And then also, and just like finding ways of creating innovative products and innovative ways of connecting with people to help them, help Kiwi be better off, which was the purpose. So, and I learned a lot about the banking system and what I liked, what I didn't. And it was a really cool experience. And then I was looking after bank feeds as one of my products at the time, and then started to get to know what was happening at Xero a bit more. And I really liked the idea of Xero, where it was growing globally from Aotearoa and from Wellington, and then got the opportunity to go over to Xero. And I was a little bit nervous because it was a bit more, on paper as a marketing role, a global marketing role. And I really loved finance. And so I was like, I don't know. But what captured me about that opportunity was it was around this ecosystem of all these companies that integrate to Xero, and looking at, how do we monetize that? Where's the value exchange, and how can it be valuable for those companies, but also valuable for Xero? And so there was this kind of commercial and kind of finance element to it that was really intriguing to me too. Yeah. And global, yeah.
And how did you find the difference between environment, Kiwi Bank, which is a very different type of entity to, say, Xero, particularly at that stage, probably in their growth journey, but there would have been other areas that were probably quite similar.
The similarities were they're both, born and bred in Whanganui-Atara, Wellington, really purpose-driven, like there to really create an impact, and growth mode. They were both in growth mode when I'm there. Like, Kiwi Bank was early and Xero, was earlier too. So that was awesome. I think the technology enablement of Xero was amazing. Like we went from desktop, so funny to talk about it, but to, like laptops with all Google integrations at Xero, and the global aspect was really interesting to me. Obviously Kiwi Bank's solely focused on Aotearoa, where they learned about how does our culture scale globally, and how do we work with, Americans and people in the UK, and how do you get that kind of alignment to strategy globally? I just found it really interesting. So those are like two of the very key differences, I think. But very Kiwi in the way they both approach business.
Yep.
And love growth mode. Yeah.
What would you say were the things that maybe grated you, say, the most in say, banking to start with? What were the things that didn't excite you about that type of environment?
I wouldn't say it's the environment, but like I started to learn, how opportunities are behind closed doors, and I was intrigued on that. So, I don't think anyone in my family at that time knew you could negotiate mortgage rates or term deposits, and that stuff can happen. And that's not, I think they thought, what the bank gives you is what you get, And I don't think that is something that was well known out, across Aotearoa. So that was something that was intriguing to me. I was like, how can you unlock those opportunities? I think there really wasn't, obviously, many investing options outside of home ownership for a lot of people. And, Sonia had the initial idea behind Sharesies, and I know that was a big catalyst for her too. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes people in banking, it's actually not even banking, it's just probably the nature of how people operate, is you're dealing with people who have sometimes heaps of money and sometimes who are really struggling week to week.
Yes.
And sometimes the rhetoric around those people that are struggling can get actually, I think, quite nasty. And I think it's because that, it's putting pressure on the banking system at a certain time because everyone's trying to go to an ATM. It's like, but why? And how can we solve that problem? Rather than look at people as problems, like actually there's a real need here and it's up to us to solve it. So there were just like moments like that I thought, there could, and that's across the whole banking system. I think Kiwi Bank in particular puts so much care into people here in and I think, I had so much opportunity there too. And I think they really, really deeply care. But those things are just so interesting in terms of, with technology, experiences can be better for everyone.
Yes.
Is probably.
Yeah.
And Kiwi Bank was running on legacy credit union technology already then, so.
Yeah, I always found that a little bit strange in some, early interactions with them, thinking, brand new bank, it's going to be brand new cutting edge technology.
They had to work with the budget they had and what they had at the time.
It wasn't that easy, right?
Cloud was, they still started before a lot of that technology
was
readily used. So
yeah. And what about, Xero? Because they're really, on a real tear, growing, really, really quickly. I guess at that stage, you were there, 2015 through to 2017. So that was probably a period before the US growth really took off, or was that
That was definitely
that
part
was
of the
kind of
agenda.
quite a key part of what you were involved in and working on?
Oh, I think Xero were involved in. I think and we were having a growing ecosystem there, and I did get to head over to San Francisco where they had a XeroCon, and worked predominantly with some of the American team too. But yeah, they're growing everywhere, and it was just it was a really fun time, and challenging times for sure. But it was a really cool opportunity to see, and kudos to all the team that have created that company.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so many Kiwis involved, and of course we've got a podcast or two or three, or I don't know how many I've lost count with Rod over the years across the New Zealand tech podcast and New Zealand business podcast. So there's lots there for those that are interested in hearing a little bit from that side. I guess when I think about it, there must be so many stories from inside Xero, the different learnings and the amazing work there. What are the things that really stand out for you looking back, the lessons that you walked away with that have contributed to your future?
I think looking back, and something I have respect for is I see Rod now as like the he obviously was a founder then, but now having founded a company, I just could imagine some of the things he was dealing with, or why certain things were a priority, and so just that respect there to go. I could see, now I have a different lens, it's really interesting, and you've, good on you,
different sides, right? Yeah, definitely.
So that's kind of cool. And then the other great thing about a company like Xero is the ecosystem that sprung out of it. So from capital, because people, Xero is where I got my first shares too, is through their staff share scheme. So being able to get access to that, and then how many people were able to get access to that as employees, and then being able to, then they go and invest in companies like us or other startups, and so they invest their money that they might have earned through their time at Xero and their shares at Xero, but also their time. So early on, one of the early finance people at Xero has supported us, Paul Williams, and continues to. He would help test our business model. He would meet with us every week to make Leighton, Sonia and I's views a bit more realistic, I guess. But also I think we learned a lot from him and continue to, in terms of just managing a real sustainable business for the long term, and then the connections that they bring to globally too. I think it really helps. There's this whole big ripple effect when a company like that starts. Same with KiwiBank, same with TradeMe, and Xero's had really good global success there too. Also in Australia too.
Yeah. Now, I had a note here that you were a mentor Indigo and Iris.
Oh my gosh, I need it. Yeah. Yes, I was. So that was a social enterprise, and Bonnie is just phenomenal, who's the initial founder of that, and then also Hannah, who took over the reins. And the whole point was to, you create mascara and you sell it, and then restore eyesight in the Pacific through the Fred Hollows Foundation. So
fantastic.
It was a really cool, and I really care about businesses being a force for good, for socially or environmentally. And she was looking for support then. The thing that I realized for me, and I didn't kick on with it, and Hannah took, and the team were fantastic, but I just beauty wasn't an industry I was that interested in, so you got to kind of have that, I think, too. So but Bonnie is incredibly talented artistically and also as a businesswoman.
So
and Hannah
doing something like that, mentoring someone else in an era that maybe you're not actually that passionate about. Do you think you came away getting something out of that too?
Oh, definitely. And when I say that, there was an option of actually going in on it. Okay. It was around the same time as Sharesies, and that sparked a bit more of me. But I would mentor young enterprise teams too, and you get a lot out of it. It's incredibly rewarding, and just really energizing. And I think there's so much bravery and naivety, and I think we need to keep that more, I think we get kind of hardened, or we think these doors are shut.
Yeah.
But when people would just start with that what if, I think I love that, because that's how innovation does happen. So it was a really cool time in my life.
So definitely something you'd encourage others to
if they've got the time and the commitment, I think you're not there to, be a mentor if you're willing to, ask really good questions and not try and come in with all the answers, because that kind of gives people whiplash, and it's really just like, how can you be the wind beneath someone's wings and help them understand what they're, unconsciously incompetent at, and help them be more, if that's what needed, or be their cheerleader. It's like, I think I think you got to go in with the right mentality, and it's a giving role.
Good. Now we come to Sharesies.
Yes.
So how did it all come about? Walk us through that founding story, those that were involved, and how it sort of took shape to actually get off the ground.
So there, 6 of us that founded Sharesies, and like respect to each of us having our own different backstories and stories that kind of led us into this room. So I'll talk from my perspective and what I saw. But so Leighton and I were really keen on starting a business, and we had a few ideas, and we're looking at a few.
Husband.
This is my husband.
Yeah.
Then, part a fiance maybe. And we, had a few ideas, and one of them we were looking at doing with our 2 technical co-founders, Richard and Martin. And then we had heard and we'd heard about this FinTech accelerator, which was quite a good kind of deadline time to try and chuck something in to get us started, essentially.
Yeah. So how many ideas did you have on the go?
I think there were like 2 at that time, that by the time we got to this point. And then Sonia and Ben, Sonia had this idea of like, I wish $50 could mean something, with the house prices becoming more unaffordable, like how could we help people grow it? And Ben encouraged her to go talk to somebody about it, and that's a good idea on something. So she talked with Leighton, and Leighton, because they worked together, Leighton started an investment club when he was 17 years old, putting $50 away a week with some friends, and they just put it away, and they thought they were investors, and the first things they were putting it into was a bank account. And then they bought a cow, and then ended up being a herd of cows and our commercial property and all these things, and they still do it to this day, from starting with $50 each a week.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, how can we make that happen at scale? So we all got a room about this time 8 or 9 years ago, and 9 years ago it would have been. We got into a room, and we just kind of talked about these kind of different ideas we had, and it was just very clear there's something in this investing space, or there's something in financial empowerment that we could focus on. So we filled out the paperwork to get into this accelerator.
Yep.
Had to come up with the name, which Sonia did on the back of a scooter drive on the way home. She's like, Sharesies, works on so many levels. And then someone was like, can only see 2. I was like, it was just great. It's a beautiful name, and she's incredibly talented. And then we got to it, and what got to it meant was actually interviewing a bunch of people, like so many people. We're lucky that somebody provided us access to do a quantitative survey, like add some questions to a survey they were doing, so it could back up some of the qualitative insights we were getting at scale, that then helped with the pitch pack that showed the proof point, and it was just, But through those conversations that we had with people, where people were telling us about how whakamā they are, and embarrassed around how they don't know what they're doing with their money, and didn't feel like an investor, but they had KiwiSaver and all of this. We knew there was a lot to do, but we knew that investing was a great place to start, because that's where people have felt left out and didn't feel like it was for them. It's like a hopeful place with money, where future grows, and if it's kind of an upward spiral rather than downward spiral approach of, like, say if we started with budgeting or something. So, which just doesn't captivate people as well. Yeah, and so that's the genesis of Sharesies and the team coming together.
And can you share with us the ideas you threw out, other things that you were thinking
honestly,
about?
I can't actually recall very well because it was kind of a quick one. The finance, there's some sort of gaming education element to it.
Yeah.
But one was we were thinking like Airbnb was starting to take off, and we're like Air Manager, which is like, managing Airbnbs. But like Lane and I both suck at cleaning, and you got to be able to do the core job too, as you're starting and scaling it. And like that's not our, it's not our, it's not something we're passionate about in the details. And so glad that one didn't happen for us.
Yeah.
But I do see other businesses out there, which is awesome.
In that space,
yeah,
that's
great.
on the list to have.
I don't think it's a bad. I think it was a great idea, but you gotta care about the craft,
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah. And when you looked around, how quickly before you saw other things that were happening sort of internationally that you might be able to learn from, because it's always fascinating to me when you see this trend of related or somewhat similar entities sort of springing up in different parts of the world, sometimes without having any knowledge of what others are doing, sometimes with a little bit of a kind of view. So what did that look like?
We had no idea. We had no idea about Robinhood or Wealthsimple at that time. It wasn't until we entered the accelerator and started, like doing some research. It wasn't, I don't even know if it's those ones we heard about, but started to see, there is, because you started to look at the global opportunity a bit outside of Aotearoa and what's happening in Australia. So, and then from those insights and the research we'd done, it was just very clear what we needed to do, and then just find the right technology, which turns out building our own was what we needed to do.
Yeah. And so that initial sort of period to start, building your own technology and putting it all together, what did that look like, and how did you fund it and make that that work during those early stages?
So Leighton, Sonia, and I went full time into to start with, and the other three were part time, and we'd given each other collectively like 3 months to get a product off the ground and live in the regulated world that we operated in. So that was, compliant, and have a path forward in terms of investment or capital raise so that we could continue on. So we gave ourselves 3 months to do that, kicked off, in February, and in May we launched our beta. A lot of that was...
What was this, 2016,
2017, I think, Yeah, we just got cracking into it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a short timeline to get things rolling.
Yeah. Well, we needed to know, what was really amazing is, we went to our employees, say, hey, we want to do this. And they were like, awesome. And they gave Lane, Sonia, and I extended leave for 3 months too. So, which was really kind. So we could kind of give it a crack. And they're like, look, if it doesn't work out, you'll learn some things. And if it does, great alumni story,
Yeah.
And it wasn't competing with anything they were doing at that time either, which is cool. But so we weren't there to waste our time. We weren't there to follow a program. We were there to create a business and see if it was, we could create something that was valuable enough for people that it could have a business model that would be sustainable.
And so how did your skills kind of complement each other, and, where did you find you crossed over? How did that actually play out? So for our chief designer and, co-founder and our technical co-founders, it's pretty clear. And the technical co-founders had worked together at Richard and Martin for a number of years together. They knew how to work together really well, so that was quite helpful. And Leighton, Sonia, and I is this kind of new dynamic. But it just, I think there's a lot of crossover in our skills, which is awesome. I mean, we are 3 years. You kind of expect that. Like any one of us is, full-on CEO in our own right, I'd say, But so there is a lot of crossover. But I think early on we kind of did have to divide and conquer in the day. Yeah.
And so it is quite different how we operate now. But, Sonia did quite a lot around I think we all did a bit around product, but she would done more product and marketing, Leighton more the operations and product side and finance side, and me more strategy, people, and the kind of capital raising side of things. So, but look, everyone was in so like it's a percentage rather than a full ownership, I'd say, like some of them, might have been 33% split, but then some might have just had to pick up some more one day. So, I think we have got a really good working rhythm in terms of knowing what needs to get done and cracking on with it and leveraging each other's like unique skills when needed.
Yeah, That's really good because you've landed on this 3EO leadership model as kind of co-CEOs, and I think that's something that's it's pretty unusual out there. Sometimes you get a co-CEO and there's two. But I think people will probably be curious, as am I, of what are the edges, what are the things that are a challenge, or has it just all happened pretty naturally in terms of how you draw the lines between each other and made it work.
Yeah, so there were a lot of things in the startup world that we just rebelled against. Like, we were told, as a founder, you got too many founders, it shouldn't be two guys in a garage kind of thing. It's like, well, we need all of our skills in order to make this come to life. Like, to the point now people are like, well, who's your co-founder? It has changed the dynamics, which is cool.
Yeah.
But a trap we did fall into was we needed to pick a CEO. We were told it a bit, and so we're like, fine. So we sat down and decided I'd be the CEO because I was doing quite a lot of the raising capital shareholder side, and often they want to be talking to the CEO, so just seemed efficient. And so I went on maternity leave the first time, and Layden and Sonia co-CEO'd. Then I came back and I was CEO. Then I went on maternity leave again and they co-CEO'd. And so coming back after my second child, kind of sat down, I was like, why don't we try a co-CEO model? And I think Layden came up with the term 3EO. And we thought maybe our board wouldn't be that keen on it, but we wanted to pitch it anyway. So we pitched it as a trial, like, for 6 months, can we trial this? And these are the pitfalls we anticipate. Here's how we would work with them. And then we did a survey with our team and board and, others to determine if it worked or not. And I think it's nearly 5 years later we've been running this 3EO model, at least 4. And it's phenomenal, eh? It's, often I'd be asked to, like, even coming here today, you could have had any of us, And so when I'm asked at places, used to, they'd only want the CEO. And it's like, well, you probably actually want Layden or Sonia, And so that's changed, that dynamic. It's like we can be at 3 places at once. And that's also internally too. Like, we can move at speed. And we've got this natural intuition, I think, with each other now, where I'll know I have to loop Layden, or I need to loop Sonia into this because I know she'll care a lot or have some good ideas to add or contribute, or I just be like, I know I've got this, and I'll let them know, like, the decision or whatever. So we're really good at knowing that with each other, and maybe we could have got it wrong a few times, but there's nothing that's like a scar in that way, So no, it has worked really well for us.
How much would you say it has contributed to the pace at which you've had
hugely,
to move? Yeah.
Because we get to because it's like three for one, and then we've got a distributed, we've got a bigger executive team, which also means our company's a lot flatter, which also means people are way closer to the context, and I think that's the best way in order to deliver at speed. When people are close to the customer, they're close to the team that can make it happen, they're part of that. And it just enables a lot more execution and productivity, I think.
I guess you kind of look at all of the CEO type functions and things that you need to look after. How much more has it maybe, improved your ability, because you're working as a group, to maybe have more depth in some of these areas compared to what it might be if it was just one of you?
I'm trying to determine if I can answer that, because it's all I've known now for the last 5 years. And so I'm trying to go back to, well, was it different? But she's was different context then. We were deep in everything, as the business scales, it does change. But I think there's just something about being a founder anyway, and founder mode is like, you've seen it all from, a seed to where it is now. And so you do have quite a lot of context and of where things could be going, or when something seems a little bit off, you can dive in and have like enough knowledge to know where your knowledge gaps might be, to kind of ask the right questions. And I think so I really like that kind of founder mode way of thinking, which was, often sometimes they try and make founders be managers or like leaders. So you got to empower the team and things like that, which I agree with. But also as founders, you can go very deep and add quite a lot of value through doing that. So it's just, I like the freedom of going, that's okay. If there's something that I'm really curious about, we'll go right into it. And it might be even me changing copy or like really trying to figure out something to then go, yep, sweet, And I think that's because of the deep care and the direction we're trying to, take this company in. And I think that's for all of the founders at Sharesies. Yeah.
Yeah. There's something unique about a founder compared to sort of hired in, CEO and leadership. Yeah. Have you ever considered what would happen if someone sort of knocked on the door and said, look, we'll give you, X times your valuation, and you're able to walk away in a period of time? Is that something that's on your radar, at all? If that were to happen, would there be a price in which you would walk away, or are you too passionate about the business? Because you seem so so passionate around what you do, and you're so deeply involved in it. Yeah, can you imagine that sort of a world?
I think like we every year the founders get together, and we set up this weird practice early on, which I think is really smart actually, which was we talk to each other like, a rolling 2 years, like you're here for the next 2 years. Yep.
Yeah. Okay,
and it feels like even more so in a lot of ways. Only one founder is not in the business as much anymore, which is Tony's partner, who's, and he's still around, and it's, it was a right call for them and their family,
Yes,
but we're all really in it. And I think that we honestly think we're not even at the start, there's just so much more to do. And I just, very driven. It feels like in a lot of ways our life work. We do have shareholders too. So if something like that happened, we would have to talk with our board and shareholders and stuff. But ultimately, like we see this as Sharesies as a vehicle where we can make the most impact. And so speaking for myself, it's just like there's so much to do. Yeah.
We haven't delved too much into the sort of the journey, I guess, over this period. What would be the points that sort of stood out in those earlier years that really stick in your mind as either being super challenging, which is there's always lessons from those points, or just high points where where something really key has happened?
Yeah, I mean, running and creating a company and running one, even being in companies, it can be like a roller coaster, especially when they're growth companies. And the whole roller coaster could happen in one day, or it could be all on the high. So I think I've learned to kind of navigate that and not, try to ride it too much. But I have gone off your question a little bit. Sorry, what was the highs and lows? Yeah. So one story that's very anchored in my mind is when we first launched Sharesies, like within the first week of launching our beta, maybe it wasn't in the first week, but it was very early on in Sharesies, we were interviewed for One News, and we're going to be on the news at it's going to be after the main news, so probably about 6:10 onwards. And we're all at our homes, and this was mostly just the founding team at this stage. We had one other contractor working with us, and we all had our laptops out on intercom, ready to kind of like help any customer queries, because this is about to be launched, and people are going to sign up, and just to kind of see what's happening, watch the web traffic, all of that sort of jazz. So we had that all ready to go, and then it comes on the TV, and it's all exciting, and you can see people starting to go to our website and starting to sign up, and then we're like, something's not working here. And, thankfully the first page was getting their name and their email address. The second was verifying their identity. And unfortunately, the partner we had partnered with to verify the ID was having a blackout period at 6:00 that night for 45 minutes or something, a while.
No.
So then we've had thousands signing up, and they couldn't get through. And, the part that I reminisce and love about the story is we were just dealing with it. We were laughing. We were going back to customers. There's nothing we could do that could control it. We made sure we just got into action mode in terms of, well, how can we help these people know what's happening? And it just showed me how I had so much confidence in our founding team then. It was no blame game, like, you should know, what about, there's none of that. It's like, cool, we're in, muck in, let's figure it out. Because who wouldn't? It was just something unfortunate that happened. But it was really cool to see the people and how they responded to that too, the potential customers and then customers who were like, Murphy's Law, that's all, let us know when it's fixed. And everyone was really kind about it. And so there's something beautiful about those people that are keen to early adopt and give something a crack. And I think at that time too, we charged $30 on sign up also. So it was, that was a very good test of, I think, the character of the team, and a testament to, I think, how our culture has scaled since then too. Yeah.
Now, most businesses tend to go through varying pivots and changes. What are those points along the way where you've maybe had to adjust in a small or a big way? I mean, from the outside, I can't remember anything, but you were right there, having to make these decisions and calls. What did that look like?
Like, adjustments they sometimes happen on the daily, but the thing is, like, our purpose is create financial empowerment for everyone, and that drives us. But the timing and priorities can change based on new information, where technology is added at a certain time, the customer need, the macro environment. So being really open to the path to get there. And I think that is something that we practice a lot at Sharesies, is like, actually, because of these things, savings is actually really important to add into the mix. So we did that when, interest rates were a bit higher too. We added that in. Cryptocurrency, we're seeing it more as mainstream, was something, we're getting a lot of requests at in 2021 and heaps more recently. And it finally felt like, things have come into place, from regulator outlook to the more mainstream uptake of crypto, and also the wide customer queries we were getting about it. And how some people, it's quite a weird experience to buy crypto and have to hold keys and like have the separate wallets. Like, that's not normal behavior for when people interact with money. So we knew that there was a way that we could create a better experience. So adding that in felt right at, now that we, launched that actually today. So you shouldn't ever say today on a podcast, but that's live now. Yeah. So I think it's more like the strategy is clear. We're really flexible in the approach and timing in order to ultimately help us create more financial empowerment for everyone.
And as any sort of technology businesses, you're in some ways beholden or relying on on a lot of other parties, and so for any business, right? So whether it's someone that's checking people's ID or whatever that process was in your sign up, whether it's who's the sort of the custodian of the shares and so on, and you'll know all of these things a lot better than I do. But what sort of challenges have you had to navigate in those sorts of things, and found where you've maybe picked a particular channel, and then as you've gone along realized we might have made a better choice, or the options now available to us are different. How's it been navigating those sorts of things?
Yeah. There are a lot of partners. I think there's over 150 companies that we partner with directly, outside of our B2B part of our business, where we partner with 600 companies to provide their staff share schemes and shareholder management, but more like the integrate with Sharesies, or that we need to integrate with in order to provide our service. There's quite a number there. And one of our core parts of how we talk about how we bring our strategy to life is lovable partnerships. Like, we want these, we want our customers to win, we want our partners to win, we want to have this really lovable experience, and put deep care into these partnerships that we do have to make sure these opportunities can come to life in the way that we design them. And but also often the things outside of your control are your biggest risk. So sometimes the partners can be risky if they, like I had one example there, or if something changed tax. So again, that's an important part of lovable partnerships too, is like having good relationships in these businesses, making sure we're supporting each other and keeping up to date with changes or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think that it's a key part of how we operate Sharesies. I'm trying to think of examples of, but we would change partners too when it's needed, if it's going to create a better experience for our customers, or it can create, a better cost or whatever it might be. But ultimately, a lot of the partners are on the journey and scaling with us, and we set up, kind of contracts in place that enable that scale to be beneficial on both sides.
Yeah. And there must be a real element there where your reputation is also tied to theirs, and sometimes maybe vice versa to to a degree as well. How hard does that make it for you to decide on, I'm thinking of, say, your crypto investing option, and I went through, I guess it might have been sort of a beta or, early access, and it was very evident to me that, there were highlights around the risks associated with crypto, associated with I guess any firm you're partnering with, because there have been, obviously cases in the past where firms have lost funds and so on. And so I thought, that was really clear in terms of, if I want to, go through and buy crypto, there's no confusion if you read what's put in front of you that there is a risk. But of course, if something were to happen with, whichever provider, that you'd chosen, of course, that would, naturally have quite a big blowback as well. So must be quite hard to, work through and decide how you're going to tackle it.
Also, cool part. And I think it's really great that you read the education we put in before crypto, because I think it's really important that people see how different it is to investing on exchange or a managed fund, and really aware of it. So I'm glad that you clocked that experience and it made you think about that. And then, when we pick a partner, there's, only a handful of players that can deal with a kind of scale and deal with regulators. And, we pick Kraken for a number of reasons, but other governments do use them too. They seem to have as good security protocols that we could envision it from what we'd seen with others. And they have been tried and tested now for a while. So, but like anything, you got to make sure you're investing and staying vigilant in this technological world.
Yeah. And how have you navigated the option between, you built your own platform, but of course for crypto or for anything else, you can go out and find, a partner firm, or you could decide, hey, we're going to build all the technology for these pieces ourselves. And, there are obviously some quite big differences when you use a partner who's well established and, they can do a lot of lifting. You can move a lot, maybe a lot quicker. But, then there might be differences in terms of fee structures or, all sorts of aspects. So, how have you navigated that, or have you had a particular approach that you've just, consistently, followed across the journey, or has that evolved, over the period of the business?
We have developed a lot of our own technology. We are a wealth technology platform, and others around the globe have asked to start to connect into us to leverage out the way that we've operationalized a lot of financial information and money flows. So there's heaps within our own technology, but then
and
also
it's super
there are
easy
partners
to use,
too.
right? I think that's one of the things that sort of stands out for me is just how easy it is to use. The app is it's just simple.
Right.
And it just feels like a nice platform to interact with, right? Nice. And sometimes you go to, I don't know, I'll pick a bank, but it could be anything technology wise, and it sort of feels clunky and not so nice. And it does seem as though that's an area you've really owned. Yeah,
we care a lot about mention lovable partnerships, but creating lovable experience. And that it just is intuitive. It feels right. It's clear, and we put a lot of emphasis into that. So thank you for noticing and sharing that. But we do, again, have to partner with a bunch of people. And so when we determine if we're going to partner or build, or it depends on what it is, the time frame, the experience we can provide, and if it's not going to be a good enough experience, then we're going to figure it out. So there's a few things that kind of go into account for determining who to partner with or to build ourselves.
I imagine. I imagine that few is actually quite a lot in the background. And what's what sort of pace does it take you? Let's say crypto, for instance. I imagine this is an area you've been looking at. Not just for the last 12 months. This is, something over quite a period of time. I think I, saw a note that a number of the team, you're all involved in the investing world, have some interest in investing in crypto, previously, until you've got to this point of making it part of the app. So, what sort of length of time is the journey from, having an idea to going live. I don't know, that would probably vary from
It does vary,
product
yeah.
to product, like what you've done in terms of kids being able to use the platform and invest, and then what you're doing with debit cards that sort of earn back into investments and so on. So how do those things tend to look and evolve?
Yeah, I mean, they are, like you mentioned, they are so unique depending on the amount that we, need to partner with others or build ourselves, or the complexity, or the risk associated. So yeah, there isn't a one formula, but what we do is we always launch with the minimum lovable product. So we're not like, this has to have all the bells and whistles. Like, we've launched crypto and auto invest will come and transferring in will come, but we're like, well, it's not that we're not going to launch until then, because we want to learn, iterate, and see, well, do people really want this? And we have heaps of people saying, can I just transfer in all mine now, or can I just auto crypto? So that also then fuels the team to go, cool, we need to prioritize that too. So I think that minimum lovable, what's the minimum lovable we can do here that meets the regulatory framework, meets our security protocols, meets like the need and vision we have for Sharesies, and meets customer needs essentially, or ways that we could create the new need. So it does really vary. There's things that, can happen within a day to a couple of weeks to take actually multiple years to get to the right partnership or the right point where we feel like we can innovate and add something that's actually going to be different in a way that helps people develop wealth in the way that we see the future.
And how does that look for you, and internally? Because I mean, usually different people are going to have different opinions, right? Around, let's say, crypto. Did you have folks within your founders group who were like, hey, we should do this, X number of years ago, and then others that are like, well, we need to wait for these things. How do you work through those sorts of things, especially where you do land on different sort of pages?
I think crypto is a really good example, actually. So it must have been around 2021 where it was really interesting. Like, half the team were like, do it, we need to get up here ASAP. This is like the future of finance, and the other half like, absolutely not. The environmental impact, like it's speculation, blah, blah, blah. And at the time, both are right, in a way to that degree,
Yeah.
And so as founders, we sat down and we wrote our thoughts down in terms of, well, where do we think it is at now, and we thought at that time, we're not going to add it to the platform yet, but these are the things we would, and once we see these changes, that would likely change this view. And we're at that point now. We see crypto exchange traded funds. We've had access to them through US and the ASX. We're seeing, so many people go into cryptocurrency, and even in the financial, fund manager world, it has sustained that test of time in a lot of ways so far. And in particular, there was a lot of risks that people were taking on, like I said, in terms of them managing their own wallets, but losing their keys, and the amount of people that have just lost it, and you're like,
or the firm that was holding it losing it, or whatever.
And and there was just like a lot of, and then you talked about how when you went through the flow, it made you aware of the risk and the associated diversification and things, and it's part of a portfolio unless and so I think that is something that we feel we can do in a way that supports people to understand the currency more, the currency opportunities.
So you've said it sort of feels like you're just getting started, but looking back on on where you've come so far, what do you sort of see as the biggest lessons you've learned along the way, and the things that you'll often maybe talk to others about when you're talking to other founders and other leaders?
I think if any other founders kind of relate to this, but I heard founders are we're living in the past, because like what you see on She's now is kind of like what we've been dreaming up for a while or whatever, and so we're like over here. So that's why it always feels like we're just getting started too, I think, because there's just the next parts that we're like that where our minds are to help so it's pretty cool. But that's an interesting challenge in itself, I think, because there's just so much more to do. And every time I have a conversation with someone, and I was even talking to somebody today, and they're like, hey, I really think you need to support more people or we need to help people who have just retired because they're not getting these conversations, or there's more kids and family. There's so much more to do. Like, honestly, there is. And so the shared money architecture we're building at the moment is going to be a massive part of what's to come for us in the next year. But I think maybe it's like that relentless kind of this relentless urgency to really support people in developing, having access to develop wealth drives us daily.
Yeah, pretty.
Whether it be through
pretty big challenge. And how far ahead do you tend to look? What are you looking at things that are?
Well, that's the other annoying thing about a founder. As soon as you see the way forward, you want it now. So I can't even give you a time frame because I'm not like, well, in our 5-year plan. It's just because actually, like I told you, we did change the strategy on how we can create financial empowerment. So that might be next month. I mean, yesterday I had these businesses call me, and some of them I thought, I didn't think we'd be doing that for, partnering with a company like that for a while. And then, that's interesting now. That's, I can't, I don't know how to put a time frame to what we're thinking about, because ultimately we're always trying to find a way of how can we do that as quickly in the most, compliant and lovable way we could.
Yeah. So you'll prioritise based on range of factors.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, I think that some would be quite interested in the sort of staff share purchasing and that side of what you do. Maybe you can you walk us through the journey of how that sort of come about. And you mentioned 600 companies now are managing their sort of staff shares through Sharesies.
So the journey of how we started partnering with companies, we started to notice two things, is especially when we started with investing and providing access to the New Zealand Stock Exchange. We noticed some companies like contacting us like, hey, we are so excited that you're helping more people get access to shares. How can we help? What information do they need? Do you want to provide them? Really keen. And then also we had retail investors noticing, actually, some companies, they get the big institutional investors, they get to go into the boardroom or go to meet with the CEO of these companies to help them determine, if they want to invest or not. So how can we unlock that for more people? So we started with a podcast, Shared Lunch, which was like interviewing listed CEOs and people, economists, and trying to get that information out to more people. That might be what the conversations are in boardrooms in particular, or management teams. And then through that started to go, actually we could be doing more to bridge this communication gap. So we created this tool called Sharesies Open, where companies can communicate directly with their Sharesies shareholders or those that have their shares on their waitlist, and then also be able to get some insights in terms of how these shareholders are behaving. So for instance, we've got well over 100,000 shareholders on Sharesies that own in New Zealand. So they can communicate directly to these people, but also see, what the buy and sell ratio is, where are they based around the New Zealand, and provide this kind of insights so that they can feel more connected to what ends up, is nearly 5 to 10% of their shareholder base now. So that was where the journey started. And then we started providing share schemes as soon as we started to our team, and we used Orchestra. And we wanted to figure out how, we could see what we could do to scale in the listed space and across Australia and building out more registry services, but also how do we do that in the public space, the private space, like partnering with private companies to help them provide staff share schemes or help them manage their shareholders and shareholder communication. And we'd been being fans of Orchestra. We'd been using it for a number of years. And so, we acquired that. Now it's called Sharesies Private. And that has been going with us for nearly around a year and a half now. And that's a really important part of helping more and more people get access to the shares of the companies they work in, and also feel connected to the companies that they have shares in. And also supporting these companies have a really good experience and providing good experiences around that ownership. Like when you're giving shares in your company, you want the person to really see the value in it and feel like it's real. And often previously it's like a bunch of paperwork, but now, we're working on, we can see it in the Sharesies app. You can see any private companies alongside your listed ones and see that that's part of your wealth. And And also for those that work in those companies, they can see when their shares are vesting or how much they are, and it feels a bit more tangible and it's theirs and they are an owner. And that's important. That's a really important part of financial empowerment, is getting access to shares in the companies you work in.
Yeah, that's great. And are you seeing a growing interest, startups and so on, in terms of being able to expose their shares that way?
Yeah, I was reading the NVIDIA Way the other day, and I think it's in chapter 2 or 3, really early on. It talks about how this one company couldn't attract the top talent because they weren't doing share schemes, which was expected. And I think that's going to change here. I spoke at an event just before this, and say there's 100 in the room. I asked 2 here to get shares in the company they work for, and about 3 put their hand up. And that was the same ratio it had, 5-7 years ago when I asked about investing. So I do believe there's going to be a big change that'll be part of people's remuneration package more and more, and an expectation in terms of being able to attract top talent too. And so very passionate about, and there's heaps of people here who are so passionate about it. Like, Becca, they do it for their team. It's just, there's so many in New Zealand and Australia and around the world that are starting to do that more and more.
That's good. Yeah, I'm really curious about that particular aspect, because we don't see a lot of it in New Zealand outside of probably our startups, right? Where that's become reasonably normal. Any closing advice that you would share with listeners?
It's thanks for listening to this story. I really appreciate it. I think that curiosity is always interesting and is a really important part of developing as a human, and can see what we can learn and go, hey, we don't want to learn that from you either. Like, that's cool. So appreciate you listening. And I think that curiosity is and being able to follow this to the end too. I don't know what the stats are like, but I think that's a really important part of helping find the better questions to ask yourself or those around you, or just taking one little thing to go, oh, actually, I don't agree with this, and this is why. And I love that. I think that curiosity and that spark of critical thinking is incredibly important skills that we need to hone and harness. And so keep doing that. Is that okay?
That's good. That's good. That's good. Anything else that you wanted to add?
Oh, Sharesies, it's pretty cool. No, just a massive thanks to the Sharesies team and the other co-founders too. I am only one person amongst 220 of us, and this is just one view of the Sharesies journey that we've been on, and just incredibly tough to be able to work alongside the people I get to day.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for taking the time out to join us on the show.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers.
I trust you've enjoyed hearing from Brooke Roberts about her story and the Sharesies stories. And as she says, there's a lot more to come. So we'll look forward to following that journey. The New Zealand Business Podcast has been brought to you by Gorilla Technology, the information technology firm supporting astute, mid-size and smaller organisations to get the very best out of technology whilst minimising cyber risks. Get in touch to find out about technology, cybersecurity audits, along with help in selecting new software and having that implemented within your company. Be sure to listen in to our other episodes of the New Zealand Business Podcast. Across the episodes, we very much feature a who's who of New Zealand's most successful and innovative leaders. Look forward to catching you again on the next episode. This is Paul Spain signing out. Thank you.
The New Zealand Business Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, your strategic and proactive IT partner.